Hi everyone, welcome to Brawngp Sports and our F1 show with Ollie from F1 Global.
Hi mate, how you doing?
Good thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Another day, another lockdown, but another podcast, so it's all good.
Yeah, for sure. So since we last spoke, been quite a lot of big news in Formula One, starting with Lewis Hamilton has signed his contract extension with Mercedes. However, the news is it's only 1 year. So a bit surprised by that one. What's your thoughts on that?
I was massively surprised. We spoke about it so many times. We thought it was probably going to be 2, maybe 3 years, but we definitely thought 2. So yeah, when the news came out, it'd been 1 year. It was quite a shock. Rumours, as always with this, it's down to money. It's down to the driver he wants in the other car. It's down to having shares. It's down to having X, Y, Z. So, I mean, we don't know. None of us will probably ever know. But yeah, it'll be interesting come the end of the season. Him and Valtteri, I mean, so many drivers are out of contract. I think the end of this season is going to be insane for drivers. But yeah, I mean, we've sort of said it before. As long as he's happy racing, he'll keep racing. So if it's a good season, he's going to sign on again. Mercedes will want him, like we've said as well. Maybe Ferrari might tempt him. You know, you never know. But yeah, I can't see that just being the final season for Lewis Hamilton. What do you think? You're a big Lewis fan. Do you think he's going to stay on?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So there's some people are thinking that, could break Michael Schumacher's record next season. So could be thinking about retiring, having the world record. So he could, look at his age, he's 36. I don't really think he's hinted much about retiring. So I hope he isn't going to retire, and that's the reason. I think more likely the reason is maybe due to the financial situation, the way the world is at the moment, this pandemic. So no one knows how things are going to go for the following season in terms of crowds, sponsorships, so the money situation might be a little bit different to how it normally would be. So they wanted to take it like on a year-to-year basis, So I think that's more likely what it is. But as you said, there's so many different rumors out there. So it could be anything, but hopefully, he'll be in Formula One for a lot longer than just this one season. There's even some rumors out there that it might be he's thinking to go to Ferrari, That's always a thing that comes up time to time, isn't it?
That would be amazing, but I don't think it would happen. Sainz is signed on till 2020 for 2 seasons. So, unless it would take a radical thing. I mean, there've been rumours about introducing a salary cap. I've sort of seen crop up recently. So maybe Mercedes have thought if they bring that in, we'll make the most of that. Just get Lewis on a 1-year deal so we don't have to pay him this 30, 40 million, 50 million, whatever it is a year. And we get him on the cheap afterwards. But who knows? I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I'm sure we all would. But, we'll keep speculating. It's what we're good at.
Yeah, for sure. So, as usual, it'll be around the summer season where that will be more, people will have an idea more of who's going to be driving for who the following season. So, yeah. But that was one of the big news. But the biggest news, I think, it came out today and I was really shocked with this one. But it's really big news. It's good for the sport. And it's really good for Red Bull that they've announced they're taking over the Honda engines. So they're now going to be an engine supplier themselves. So they're going to supply their own cars. We know this is a big thing. Like through the years, major teams don't like to have other major teams as the engine suppliers. They're competing against each other. So Red Bull having their own engine now, this was a big thing. You remember when McLaren and Mercedes decided to part ways. Mercedes were then becoming a Formula One team. So McLaren decided they were going to go with a Honda engine. And we know that with Red Bull, they had issues with Renault. And now Renault are their own team through Alpine, and they're going to be a major rival. So for Red Bull to take this decision is a big thing for them, big thing for the sport in general. They could become an engine supplier for other teams as well. And it's really great news for the sport today. What's your thoughts on this?
It's brilliant news. Red Bull have been part of Formula One for 20 years now. So, they own 2 of the teams. They're a huge part of the grid. So I think anything the sport could do to keep them on, really they had to do. But yeah, it's brilliant. And it's great to hear that, Honda are going to be working with them. Obviously the engine freeze is now in place. So that'll help them out a bit more. And yeah, hopefully it'll encourage maybe others to come into the sport. There's a couple of choices for engines now. Renault definitely an option if a new team wants to join. Now Red Bull Technologies, or whatever they're calling it, is also, as well as Ferrari, I think have an engine slot free for a supplier. So hopefully that could encourage teams to come in. Red Bull may say to someone, if you want to join, we'll give you something on the cheap. Additionally, it may encourage a manufacturer to come in and sort of take the naming rights for the engine. When Red Bull had Renault, it wasn't a Renault engine, it was a Tag Heuer engine, Tag Heuer, whatever you want to call it, the timing the watch company.
Yeah.
Maybe Audi, maybe Lamborghini, someone like that may take a punt, hopefully. Don't think it will happen, but it would be nice, and then that could be a way into the sport. But brilliant news. I mean, you can't lose the risk of losing that team. You need that team in the sport nowadays. Definitely more so maybe than others. So yeah, fantastic news. Really happy to hear that. Other news as well. McLaren launched their car. What are your thoughts on it? Not much has changed in my opinion, but what are your thoughts?
Looking back, we're going to be doing a review of the 2009 season shortly, and looking back at the cars, that silver car, that little bit of red. For me, that's the best color car they've had. I know they've got to this design and it's the way they've gone now, but I personally don't think it's the best. I've agreed, definitely not one of the best, but the big news more is the car. So the car now has the Mercedes engine. It has Daniel Ricciardo there, teaming up with Nando Norris. So the CEO was making that bold announcement that he believes he has the best driver pairing on the grid. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, every team boss is going to say that. You'd hate to be a driver and go, yeah, our lads aren't very good. But I mean, that's a bold claim. I think they're definitely one of the strongest. I would say Red Bull have a stronger lineup, Perez and Max Verstappen. Say Mercedes have a stronger lineup, and I would argue that Ferrari have as strong, if not a slightly stronger lineup. So, I mean, they're up there. They're sort of in the mixer a little bit, but it's a bold claim to make, especially considering how tight last season was. McLaren could have finished, they finished third, obviously, but they could have finished sixth. Let's, be very clear with that. Renault were right with them. Who else was it? Racing Point were right with them as well. So, don't be too cocky, lads. Like, the next season, if you have one or two bad races, a crash or a fault, you could be way down there again. And Racing Point are really going to be strong this season. Well, Aston Martin, sorry, are going to be strong this season. As are Alpine. You've got Vettel in a car I think he's going to love, which is dangerous. You've got Alonso back in the sport, which is really dangerous. So, Ricciardo and Norris are really going to have to step up. But I'm looking forward to this team purely because I think there's going to be a bit of clash in the heads between those two. People are expecting this mean team. They're expecting this happy, funny stuff all the time. But there's been some statements that you can maybe read a bit too much into from Lando Norris. But I think he's realised that this is going to be a challenge and he needs to take it seriously. But we'll just got to wait and see. I mean, I know people were disappointed with the car design, just to touch on that. I mean, we're not going to see anything different. The only different car we're going to see are Alpine and Aston. Everything will look the same each year for a while. But like you said, hopefully they'll think about going back to silver and red. But you never know. You never know.
So another big news was, luckily he's okay, but there was that scare for Fernando Alonso, wasn't it? He had a bike accident and, he was in hospital, but it seems like he's going to be okay. There's still a little bit of time till the Formula One testing starts, 12th of March for that, and then the first race of the season on the 28th of March. So luckily you should be all right, should recover. And yeah, really looking forward to it. Not long for the season now, and a lot pre-season testing, as we know, it's not really the most reliable of guides, but it'll be interesting because, as we said, the aspect of the new teams coming in, Aston Martin's driver changes, so Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel getting used to their new cars, Daniel Ricciardo getting used to the McLaren. It's going to be really interesting. One testing as well for the season as well, isn't it? So a lot for the teams to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, and especially for Fernando having that accident, it's great to hear he's okay. But that young driver test, the 39-year-old Fernando Alonso took part in at the end of last season, may actually be a stroke of genius and pure luck because, he needs to get used to these cars. They're massively different. I know he's only been out of the sport 2 years, but they are massively different. So that could be real beneficial to Alpine because you never know. He broke his jaw or he had something wrong with his jaw. So, wearing a helmet may not be the most comfortable for him. So, yeah. But hopefully he'll be fighting fit and, tearing it around the track. And, You never know. They were on the podium last season. Will we see him back on the top step? Maybe so. But yeah, I feel this is a good segue into what we're talking about testing
Yes.
and the madness that 2009 testing brought around. So I'm going to let you take it from there and introduce it.
So yeah, as in our last show, we're going to do a review of one of the previous seasons. So this show we've chosen the 2009 season, and it was a great season. There was a lot of rule changes and there's a lot of controversy around it. And there was a situation where the teams had a rear diffuser. 3 of the teams had designed a double rear diffuser. They were Toyota, Williams, and Brawn, and it was thought that Brawn had the best one, which helped them to have a significant advantage over the rest of the field. And during preseason testing, they were the fastest car, and that proved to be the case when the season started, as in the first race of the season. They had a 1-2 pole position for Jenson Button ahead of his teammate Rubens Barrichello. And in the race, they also secured the 1-2 finish, and it was a great start to the season for them. You remember back then?
Oh, it was mad. I remember reading about all the changes back then, slick tyres for the first time since 1998, I think, which was great to see again. It was a simpler car. A lot of people hate these cars. Personally, I really like them. I think they're some of the best looking cars we've seen. Little go-karts, really nippy and agile. Christian Cleed, who's the BMW Sauber test driver, said they were the ugliest cars he's ever seen in his life. So, I beg to disagree with him. But, I get where he maybe came from with that. But it was massive changes, aero changes completely, some driver changes. Honda left. Brawn came up, and then they absolutely stomped that first race of the season, like you said. I just couldn't believe it. Like, obviously everyone heard about testing. Everyone thought it was a fluke. They were still refueling. KERS was new as well then. So everyone as well thought, there's something going on there. But yeah, come that qualifying weekend, it was unbelievable. And, just to see 2 very likeable guys as well in Button and Barrichello do really well was awesome. I just remember Button flying off the line. I think that's the biggest memory of that, is him just absolutely flying. Barrichello had a really poor start actually in his sort of mini recovery drive. But, there was a bit of chaos behind them as well. Like, McLaren did really poorly that whole season. Ferrari did really poorly. Red Bull were coming up through the ranks then. So, it was a really cool start to the season to see some of these big names struggle. These world champions struggle as well. So, yeah, what a race. I mean, perfect start to the season, definitely.
As you were saying with Honda situation, so it was a big thing. So Ross Brawn, he knew that he's got a really good design for that new car coming. So between him and some others, they've done a buyout of Honda team, and that was big because, as we know later on, that they're getting to Mercedes as well. So big situation for there. So having that advantage over the field, and they really took full advantage of that. They won the next race as well. Jenson done really well to win the next race. And then after that, third race was in China, where Red Bull, as you said, Red Bull were emerging men, and they were just starting. We know what happened after that season with Red Bull. They really went on to dominate. But that was the start of the domination. Sebastian Vettel was their new driver. He replaced David Coulthard, who retired the season before. And we all knew that Seb was a very good driver from his time with Toro Rosso. He had a great season the season before. He won his first race in Formula One. So yeah, he won his first race for Red Bull there in China. But then after that, Jenson went on to win the next 4 races in a row. And he built quite a commanding lead at the top of the championship. So it was looking really good for him and Brawn at that point. But then, as we know, the others fought back. And it was a bit of a case then as well that Brawn didn't really have as big a budget in terms of developing their car as well. So that allowed the others to catch up. So then after that, we had the scenario where Red Bull actually won the next race, which was the British Grand Prix. Seb won that one. And then one of the best tries I've ever seen was at a German Grand Prix. Mark Webber won his first race. And just looking back at that Grand Prix, when I was doing the review of the season, looking back, I remember watching it. It was many years ago now, but I remember it so clearly because it was one head of a drive. He touched wheels with Barrichello going into the first corner. That cost him the lead. He took pole, so that cost him the lead. And then he got a penalty for that situation as well. And that dropped him down to 8th place at one point. He came storming back, won the race, one of the best drives I've seen. You remember that race?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Mark Webber fan, so, it was great to see him get his first pole position. I've been following him since Williams, when he was with Nico Rosberg, so I'd always hoped to do well. He always seemed like a driver who had such potential. And then, yeah, just to see him get that first pole, have a typically Mark Webber start where you go backwards. I think he's one of the worst starters, I think, in Formula One history. And I think he would admit that as well. I think that is a fair comment. But yeah, seeing him touch wheels and go, oh God, like he's thrown it away, whatever. And just what a great recovery drive. And he showed what he can do, and it definitely gave him the starting point to like progress and really push his career forward. I think that was the point where, it gave him maybe a bit of confidence to go, do you know what? I could win a world championship. And we all know the story from their fight with Seb for the next 4 years. So yeah, what a race. I think other bits to remember from that first half of the season were, I've got the results in front of me. Ferrari picked up only, I think, 1 or 2 podiums. So really struggling. McLaren, I don't think picked up a podium at all in the first half of the season, which was really just pretty crazy. Toyota picked up, I think, 3 or 4 podiums in that first half of the season. Always such big promises with Toyota, massive budget. These changing regulations started making people think, oh, is this their year? They nailed the diffuser. They were getting curves right. Had a good lineup with Trulli and Glock. They were doing pretty well. And then, it was just struggles further down for like the smaller teams. Toro Rosso were not the Alpha Tauri of today. They were struggling. Force India, then Racing Point, then Aston Martin, also struggling. So that first half of the season, I think if people sort of go back and watch it, is interesting to see Brawn dominating, but just watching everyone behind them, them and Red Bull just being completely all over the place. So yeah, it was a great start to the season. That German race was amazing. And then, then it led on to Hungary. And we, I think one of the most iconic moments in Formula One history with the Felipe Massa accident, that for me personally, I think that massively changed him as a racer. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Do you think that whole incident with the spring and the Brawn car, do you think it changed him after?
Yeah, sure. I don't think he came back the same driver. He was such a good driver this couple of seasons before that. The one where he challenged Hamilton was the season before that, wasn't it, in 2008? Yeah. And the one in 2007 that we reviewed last time where he was doing really well. Kimi won the championship that year, but he was right out there winning races. And yeah, he was doing such a great job before that accident happened. And yeah, definitely, it did make an impact to him. But that race, again, was a race where McLaren actually won and Hamilton won. And as poor as their car was that season, that's just, you got to give it to Lewis and McLaren to get a win in that situation. So yeah, so looking through that season there, so Ferrari did actually manage to get a win as well. Kimi at his favourite place, Belgium, won that one. So,
but can we just say as well, Giancarlo Fisichella on pole position? What a pole lap! That Force India, everyone was like, "Hang, what is a Force India doing on pole?" And he got second. That was an amazing race as well for those guys.
Yeah,
so I've got to give a shout out to Force India.
Yeah, that's what was so good about that season. That it wasn't one dominant team, even though Brawn started off so well and Red Bull were doing so well. We saw other teams winning. We saw other teams getting pole positions. The Toyota was very strong that season. I remember Jarno Trulli was doing a great job with them. So yeah, then after that, we had Rubens managed to get a win. His first win of the season was at the European Grand Prix, and he backed up the race after Kimi won in Belgium by winning the Italian Grand Prix. So that he started to close the gap on Jensen at the top of the championship. So with 3 races left, Lewis also, before I get into the last 3 races of the season, Lewis won the race at Singapore that season as well. So for a poor season from McLaren, we've still done all right to win a couple of races, and we know how good Lewis is, and he managed to get a couple of wins too. He's won a race every season he's been in Formula One, hasn't he? That's an amazing thing to have. So
I think the only driver to do it as well. So what a stamp.
So it shows you, even when the car's been poor, he still managed to get wins. And yeah, so then that left us to the last 3 races of the season where Jensen was on 84 points. He was 15 ahead of Rubens, and Vettel was 10 points behind him. So still had a good lead there, Jensen, and it was about if he could manage to hold on to it, or would his teammate or Red Bulls manage to overtake him. Red Bull did dominate the last 3 races of the season. Vettel won in Japan, Webber won in Brazil, and Vettel then won in Abu Dhabi. However, Button managed to secure the 5th place in Brazil. He make him become, for the first time, a world champion. What a performance it was for him, and what a performance for the team Brawn to win the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship that season. Really great. What are your memories on that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it being like, it sort of snuck up on me how close it was, that ending. I don't know if you feel the same way. Like he'd dominated the first half of the season, and then he had a couple of issues, obviously, just some low results, but he was still getting points. But I didn't realise how fast Vettel caught up with him. And you think Malaysia, that second race of the season where it was half points, Vettel actually crashed out where he had a fault. If he got a result there, things could have been definitely a lot different, at the end of the season. But yeah, it was just an iconic finishing, singing "We Are the Champions" over the line. His dad being there as well. John Button was such a major part of that season. I remember, especially with it being on the BBC as well for the first time. So it was just huge for the sport, actually. It was just what a season. I have to say, I did feel bad for Barrichello because he, everybody felt he was good enough to win a championship in Ferrari. He was just with Michael Schumacher, unlucky in that regard. It was a bit of a shame, but yeah, I mean, what a season, what a drive, and yeah, what a way to end it as well. Came to Abu Dhabi, Braun had their struggles, but he managed to put it on third. So it's always nice to see a driver on the last race of the season on the podium, getting that applause. So yeah, he finished strong, and he did what he needed to do at the end of the day. You win a championship by scoring the most points, and that's what he did. And yeah, just a crazy season. Just crazy season. What about you? Do you remember the Brazil race? I just remember it being tense for 2 hours.
Yeah, I remember it was getting nervous, because Barrichello was closing in, and so Vettel was closing in as well, and he hadn't had a win for so many races as well. So it's just about getting enough points and just being consistent, and he managed to do that. And it was, like I say, for him in that situation, first world championship. We know it's always the hardest one to win. So as it turned out, it was the only world championship he won. So obviously the season that he would fondly look back on. But we know he's a really good driver. We saw him when he was up against Lewis. We know how dominant Lewis is, but Jenson really competed well with him. So it was great to see him get that world championship, and just the circumstances around it, the unknown small Braun Grand Prix at that point, major upset, as you said, the powerhouses of Ferrari and McLaren had really poor seasons. There was this up and coming Red Bull of Sebastian Vettel, Mark Webber, done really well. So that was just a good season. It's like we said, what's happened recently in Formula One is we're not seeing this so much, and it does add to the excitement where it's not just the big teams, the most dominant teams that are always dominating the races. It's nice to have that change up. So we're really hoping that the new rules that are coming in 2022, it's going to be this year. Unfortunately, it's been delayed to next year. Really hoping there's a similar sort of effect where we see that, things shake up with order, more teams are able to win races, and therefore you have a closer battle and a more competitive world championship.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed. It would just be nice just to see. I don't want the top teams to fall all the way to the back and vice versa. We just want a competitive season, I think. We want to go in not thinking that Mercedes are going to win it and win every race. And it would just be nice for some of these midfield teams to get up there, and it encourages others to join. This season, some teams left, Toyota left, and BMW left, which are two huge names, but we got Lotus, Virgin, and HRT who joined, and they spent all the time at the back. Yes, they were promised things by Bernie Ecclestone that didn't happen, but they still joined, and that is partly due to how mixed up this season was. So hopefully we may see other teams join if that happens. But just wanted to say about Jenson Button, you touched on it there. People do give him stick, weirdly enough, for this World Championship, which I don't think is right. He won it. But, overall with his career, where would you rank him sort of compared to other drivers? Like, is he, I would say he's better than Ricardo and stuff like that? Is he as good as people like Mansell? Where do you think he sort of lies? Is he one of the top tier drivers, or is he in that sort of like not quite the top 15, top 10 mark? Because I find it hard to rank where he sort of lands.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So he's won many races. Karen, he has some brilliant drives. You remember that driving in Canada? That's one of the best drives ever. What a drive, So like I said, to compete with Lewis. So they always say that Yardstick's your teammate. So to compete with Lewis, it wasn't. It's really a tricky one. The question you asked me is a really hard one. Where to put him?
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Where do you put him?
I would put him definitely as an elite driver, but that like legendary level that you would say the likes of Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, Ayrton Senna, You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
Senna.
you know, so then he's not quite there, but he's in that group just behind them, you know. And maybe if he had more opportunities with more dominant cars, you know, because he was very consistent. You know, he managed to beat Lewis Hamilton in the championship, you know, and we know that's not easy to do, you know. So to do that, it shows he's a very consistent driver. And for outright pace, Lewis was more dominant in through, we could see through the head-to-heads in the pole positions. But yeah, definitely he's up there. Like I say, definitely couldn't give him a number, but definitely just that group behind the legendary drivers. And yeah, it was a pleasure to watch him race, you know.
I mean,
asking you that.
I'd have to agree. I'd have to agree. It's so difficult though. I mean, like I sort of think of it in football terms. You know, you have the Premier League champions, and they are your Schumachers, your Hamiltons, your Fangios, your Sennas, etc. Then you've got like the Champions League sort of people. You know, second, third, fourth. You know, that group.
Yeah.
And I'd put him in there. You know, he's won a world championship. He's, you know, double-digit wins, etc., etc. You know, I'd put him, Kimi, sort of in the same level that regard. And then, you know, the multiple race winners is who's next, the Europa Leagues, your Ricardo's, Bottas, people like that. That's how I sort of think of it. I know it's a bit unconventional, but he's in that group, you know, between elite and very good. He's you know, him, Kimi are sort of hard ones to judge. They had really odd careers, you know. You know, but yeah, that's where I'd put him. And like you said, his consistency, definitely. People forget about his times with BAR and BAR Honda. You know, he came third in the championship at one point, you know, and he could have challenged if he had a more reliable car, I think. But yeah, I think he won't go down as a legend, but I think he'll definitely go down. His season will go down as legend. I think, you know, it's a Leicester City type season. You know, it's a fairy tale story, and I'm just happy we got to see it. You know, it's very rare for that to happen. So yeah, I think that's maybe where I'd put it. And like you said, this season was very important because it led on to massive changes. A Red Bull dominance, but then also led on to Lewis going to Mercedes. You know, it massively shook up the season. You know, I think this season and the season before are two defining ones in sort of modern Formula One. I think without it, you know, things would have been massively different. But yeah, and then we got a deserving world champion, and I think that sort of is it with 2009. There's not much more you can say. Would you recommend people go back and watch it? If you had to pick it to say go back and watch a season, would this be one of them?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's one of the highlight seasons. Yeah. Definitely, since I've been watching Formula One since 1996. Definitely in my era, and just like I say, we always know that when there's a competitiveness in any sport, it makes a big difference. You know, the audience are more glued to it. You know, if we're just seeing, like even a football match, you use a football match example, we're just seeing teams win 5-0. That's not as much fun as watching a game that's 3-2. You know, so like same thing in Formula One. And you know, they've been talking about this a lot. So let's hope the rules that are coming in next year will do this. You know, drivers are able to follow each other more closely. There's more of a take-in, and it's just much more fun to watch. As much as it's good to see the dominance and the skill of Mercedes, and again, we're talking about 2009. So the Mercedes team, as we were saying earlier, they took over Brawn, wasn't it? So that was all a big part of that whole way. How, as you said, Red Bull were dominant a few years. Then Mercedes kicked in, and that was originally from Brawn and Ross Brawn. So he played a massive part in what Mercedes have gone on to achieve, and they're currently at 7 times in a row World Drivers' Championships and World Constructors' Championships. Are they going to make it 8 this season? We're about to find out soon. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, well, they are going to. I'm going to tell you this now. They are.
I would say it's pretty much a very high chance of that happening. You know, maybe Red Bull could. We saw towards the end of last season. You know, I'm clutching at straws a little bit. I know. But,
yeah, I'm so happy you are, because it's normally me saying it, but.
Yeah, maybe Red Bull do something. You know, this is another thing. Like, unfortunately, I don't want to be on Valtteri's back again. You know, he's a good driver in his own right. But if Jensen was in that Mercedes, we wouldn't be thinking about this season. It'd be an easy Hamilton win again. Like last season was an easy Hamilton win, and the season before that.
Yeah.
You know, like Button would challenge him, definitely. You know?
And look at the parallels 2009. Barrichello challenged Button all the way. You know, and it didn't seem like it, but he did. And we don't see that with Bottas. I know we could bash him all we want, but, you know, we said at the start, 1-year deal, lots of things changing. I think Valtteri Bottas will be one of those things changing. you know.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Okay, so thank you so much for your time. And thank you for watching, everyone. And please remember to subscribe, like, and share.